God, I love it so much. Okay. Putting it down. Hey guys, welcome back. So, July wrap up. I cannot believe we're already in August. Let me just get that out of the way and say that right now. But here we are. Summer is almost done, and let's talk about the books that I read in July, okay? So I will be honest, at the surface level, it looks like, or it may look like, it wasn't a good reading month for me if we're going by sheer quantity. However, if we're going by quality, this month was a great reading month. Okay, so like I was saying, this month wasn't great in terms of how many books that I read because I only read 5 books. I am putting that in quotes because I never put pressure on myself to read a certain amount, and whether it's reading 5 books or 15 books, reading is reading and I always enjoy it. But you know, that said, people always get bogged down by numbers, so let's just put that out there. So in terms of the books that I read, even though I read 5 books, they were really good. On average, they were about a high 4. I think I gave the majority of them 4-star. I had 1 3-star, and then I had a 5-star. So let's dive in. I've got my stack of books here. This almost never happens because most of the time when I am doing a wrap up, it is a compilation of ebooks, audiobooks, and maybe a couple of physical books. But I went on a Amazon book buying binge thanks to BookTube, thanks to Bookstagram. What else is new? But this was the first time that I actually immediately read the books that I ordered, which is why I have physical copies of all of them. Well, all of them except for one. So let's let's talk about that one first. I don't really have to go in order of when I read the book. So the audiobook that I listened to was Vengeance in Death, which is the 6th installment of the In Death series. If you guys have been around for a while, if you follow me for a while, you know that I need to turn my phone off. Okay, you know that I am a fan of J.D. Robb's In Death series, and this particular book was an excellent addition to the installment. I'm not gonna again give you like an overarching summary about what the series is about because I feel like I do that all the time, but I want to talk about this specific book because I think that it was a standout in terms of the series, which is something that's hard to do when you've got so many books in the series, especially when you're binging them. I know sometimes it can seem like things are often repetitive, but that was not the case with this book. I really enjoyed the plot line for this one because the case that Eve is investigating hits really close to home, so close in fact that Somerset, which is kind of like their housekeeper slash butler slash friend, is actually implicated for the murder, and a lot of people that Rourke knew or knows have been dying and being murdered. That's terrible grammar. I cannot talk today. A lot of people who Rourke know have actually ended up murdered, and Somerset is the one that is accused of them just based off of the evidence. And so I really like this one because it yet again reminds me just how flawed Eve's character is and how much Rourke is such a perfect foil to her character. You know, she's got a lot of growing to do. I will admit she has also done a lot of growing, but in terms of her emotional capabilities, she still has a ways to go, and Rourke is always so patient with her. And I really like the fact that we actually travel to Ireland to get a bit of his history, a bit of his background. Same goes for Somerset because the two of them actually go way back, and so to kind of see behind the curtain of what makes Somerset ticks is something that I think is really interesting. For those of you who are not familiar with the series, I would probably equate it to Batman's Alfred. You know, we never really hear that much about him, but we know that he's Batman's OG ride or die. And so to like have him framed for murder is obviously something that's going to be very emotional, and that's exactly what this was. So yeah, I gave this one 4 stars, which is a lot to say for a series, and I really enjoyed it. Okay, so moving on for the rest of the books, they were all physical. I want to hold them up again just so that I can like show them off. Like, that's so awesome. Also out of character is the fact that I've got hardbacks, which I typically tend to shy away from, but because a lot of these, or all of them actually are new releases. The paperback versions aren't available yet. So let's start with Home Before Dark by Riley Sager. This was one of my anticipated releases for the year. I was actually really glad when I found out that they were releasing it a little bit earlier, which is kind of surprising given quarantine and all that, but I'm fine with it. So this one I really liked. I gave it 4-star, but I will say it's really interesting because I've read a couple of Riley Sager books before, and okay, I've got some thoughts, so let's just kind of break this down. Let's talk about first what the story is about. Basically, what we have is a woman returns to a home, not necessarily her childhood home, but a home that her and her family lived in for a short amount of time when she was younger. And this home has been allegedly haunted, so much so that her dad ended up writing like an Amityville horror type book about it that took off and was really famous. And she's basically had to live her life being known as the child who grew up in this Amityville home. So the story starts off with he's dead, and so she has to go back to the house to basically collect the things and sell it off or whatever she ends up wanting to do with it. And she promises her mom that she wouldn't go there, but she ends up doing it anyway because she is also a I think like an interior designer or something like that. And so she thinks that this would also be good for her career. So it's like finding out a little bit about her past while also having it be something that can help boost her career. And so when she's there, a lot of strange shit starts happening. What I liked about this book is that we get basically alternating chapters between what is happening current time with this woman, and then also we actually read passages from the book that the dad wrote, this Amityville type book. And the book within a book, first of all, you guys know that I love that kind of trope where there's books within a book, and the fact that we get so much of it in this one is something that I really appreciated. I think that this Amityville type book, I don't remember what the actual book is called, it doesn't matter, but I thought it was extremely well written. Surprisingly something that I would probably want to read today, even though in real life I don't want to read any kind of Amityville thing, but if it were something that's out today, then yeah, I could totally see how it's a bestseller just like it is in this particular storyline. As far as the present day, I will say Riley Sager did an excellent job making me want to follow a character who I didn't like. And I gotta be honest with you guys, when it comes to stories, I guess I am for the most part a plot-driven person. If the plot is interesting enough, I will follow along despite the characters. So I found Maggie a little standoffish, generally unlikable, and I didn't understand her compulsion to go to this house. You know, as I mentioned, her mom asked her to stay away from it. She technically could have sold the house without actually being there, but for some reason she just insisted on digging for answers, which personally I thought was a little vexing because we never really understood the root reason, because you know, it was something that happened in her childhood that didn't last that long. So the fact that it had such a lasting effect, I mean, I'm not going to try and I don't understand her compulsion, but regardless, I was right there with her, and that says a lot for the writing. So, in terms of like the scariness, as much as I enjoyed this book, I think maybe I personally overhyped the fear factor in it because it wasn't necessarily scary to me. Now, full disclosure, I read it during the daytime, so maybe subconsciously I didn't want to set myself up for it, but just putting that out there, if you enjoy thrillers, I know this one is being hyped a lot about having a lot of horror elements, and while there is this resemblance to the whole Amityville thing, I wouldn't necessarily say that it's along the lines of like Stephen King type horror. Next, we have The Guest List. This was yet another one of my anticipated reads for the year. Like I said, this month was just great in terms of like reading new releases that I was excited about. And I really enjoyed this one. I gave it 4 stars. And I gotta say, I didn't realize this until like weeks after I read the book, but it reminded me a lot of Sherry Lapina's An Unwanted Guest, which I loved so much. But in terms of the tropes, they kind of mirror each other. But that's not a bad thing because it's a trope that I love. And the trope is basically a group of people, strangers or people who know each other, being stranded in a remote location. And that is the exact premise for this one. The group of people actually know each other because they are on a wedding weekend getaway on this remote island. There's like a storm that happens and somebody ends up going missing and being murdered. And the book starts out with the murder having already happened, and then we kind of backtrack from there and count down until the actual wedding day. Now, I really enjoy the writing style for this one. I think that it went by very quickly. It was very fast paced, and the alternating chapters between kind of the main characters that we're following lends a lot to that. So in terms of who we're following in this book, it's actually a really interesting cast of characters, and I think that the author did a really smart thing by choosing these particular ones as opposed to other more obvious choices. So for example, let me just read you who it is. So we have the bride, the plus one, the best man, the wedding planner, and the bridesmaid. So these are the people whose stories we are following, alternating throughout the chapters. And when I said it was interesting that she picked these, she could have easily went with like the groom or I don't know, who else is at a wedding? The parents or somebody more kind of close knit, but like the fact that she chose a plus one as opposed to the groomsman who brought the plus one, I thought was a really interesting choice. It all paid out in the end, and each of the voices were very distinct. I obviously read it physically, but I have a feeling that if you were to listen to it on audiobook, each of the personalities are so fleshed out that you'd know immediately who was who when the chapters were alternating. So I really enjoyed it. I thought that the tension was high. I think I read it in one sitting, which is saying a lot because, again, very fast paced. And even though the entire story doesn't take place during the storm, it's just got such a tense atmospheric vibe to it that you could swear it's raining the whole time, even though it's not. And that's one reason why I really enjoy this book. So if you like kind of Agatha Christie style thrillers or murder mysteries where it's like a locked room style, meaning, you know, somebody had to have done it because there's no escape or way in or out, then definitely check this one out. Okay, so moving on to the only 3-star out of the bunch, we have 8 Perfect Murders. This one was yet another one of my anticipated reads, and it was for a couple of reasons actually. One, it's a mystery thriller, and then 2, it involves a bookseller. Again, y'all know that I like my bookish books or books featuring booksellers, librarians, authors, etc., and that's exactly why I was excited to read this one. As far as the premise, a quick rundown basically is that we have a bookseller who once upon a time wrote a blog post for the book's website outlining his perfect murders, 8 of his perfect murders, meaning stories where the murders are flawless, or at least almost flawless. So I think like Strangers on a Train is one of them. I think there's the ABC Murders by Agatha Christie. These are real life stories is what I'm trying to say. And so fast forward some years later and a cop knocks on his door, or an FBI agent, and basically lets him know that there is somebody going around using his list to commit these perfect crimes. And so he starts off out as a suspect, but he himself tries to start digging into things because the murders hit a little bit too close for home and he wants to get to the bottom of this. And it's just kind of intrigue all around. So as far as the reason why I gave it 3 stars, so as much as I like the bookish theme, I think that the main character was bland, unfortunately. I don't know if it would have made a difference if I listened to it on audiobook, but in terms of his just personality, it came off very humdrum. Now, I don't know if maybe that was actually done on purpose, because the way that he was described, or the way that he described himself, is that he's very like apathetic about a lot of things. He's very like surface level, doesn't really connect with people. In fact, he says that the more he knows somebody, the further away he feels like he pulls back. So maybe it's done on purpose that I ended up thinking he was a little dry. But for some reason in this case, unlike in the Riley Sager book, I think that his lack of personality affected the way that I feel about this book, as opposed to the Riley Sager, where I'm like, I don't really like Maggie, but I'm right next to her going into this haunted house. That said, as far as like the actual mystery, I do think it was interesting. It was a good amount of side characters to give you like red herrings, both as the reader and then also for the guy that we're following. He thinks, or he starts to think like, ooh, could that person be the killer? Could this person be the killer? So it's kind of fun to kind of point the finger, and admittedly, I didn't figure it out. Though I will say, when I'm reading thrillers or mysteries, I will like jokingly think that I know who the killer is, but I don't actively try and figure it out because I don't really care. It's all about the journey to me. So if you like your mysteries or thrillers with literary references, I would definitely recommend this one. If you like your mysteries and thrillers that you don't necessarily know who the killer is, that would be interesting. Overall, 3 stars isn't necessarily bad. It just unfortunately wasn't super memorable for me. So that's where we landed on that. Okay, last up. Okay, full disclosure, I just finished this book last night, and I closed it with like red puffy eyes. I think I finished it at midnight. Pretty sure I posted an Instagram story of like half coherent thoughts because I just had to get it out there. But needless to say, I freaking loved this book. 5 stars, and it was not one of my most anticipated reads. However, it was a book that I bought out of FOMO. I saw it floating around Bookstagram, and everybody kept raving about how good it was, and I had to pick it up and see for myself. So I tried to actually read this a couple weeks ago and couldn't get past the first 2 pages because I realized I wasn't in the mood for like women's fiction / romance. And I picked up the Riley Sager instead, which was a good choice. But I was finally ready for it, and oh my God, I finished it in 2 days, and I love this book so much. I love this book so much. I wish I could go back and do my mid-year freak out and say that this was the best book in 2020 I've read so far. So, basically, let me just give you the rundown of what it's about. We have a woman who goes to her deceased father's beach house, which he left for her, and she didn't want to do it because, towards the end of his death, she realizes that he was cheating on her mom, and she harbors these ill feelings. However, she's broke, she is a writer with writer's block, and she really just needs to hole up and concentrate for the summer to bang out a book. Well, lo and behold, her neighbor is this guy who she went to college with, who was unknowingly her writing nemesis, because he too has gone on to be this famous author, but he writes literary fiction, whereas she writes romance. And so the two of them have this enormous chemistry in terms of like their banter, and essentially they bet each other that they can't write each other's genres because he too is having just a little bit of writer's block, and they think that kind of stepping outside the box and trying something new might help that along. So as the book progresses, they kind of go on these unofficial dates where they are showing each other how they do research for their respective genres, and while they're doing that, naturally they get closer, and their secrets or their past starts coming out. Old wounds are being opened, and oh my God, you guys, it's just so good. So there is a part, first of all, let's talk about the dialogue, because hands down, this is some of the best freaking dialogue I have ever read. From the text messages that she has with her girlfriend to just the inner monologue, because it is written in first person from the female's point of view, to even the banter between her and Gus, the male protagonist. Obviously, when it comes to like romances, the witty banter isn't necessarily like true to life, but in this case, I feel like it was just snarky and realistic enough that I can see somebody quick-witted quoted saying those same exact things, and I just loved it so much. It took their chemistry to like level 1000. And Emily Henry's writing is just fantastic in this book. I cannot stress that enough. Like, as soon as I finished reading this book, I wanted to start it up again, reread with a freaking highlighter in my hand. And I gotta be honest, as I started reading into it, I mean, I was only on chapter 2 and I'm like, God damn, there are so many things I already want to highlight. But at the same time, I didn't want to bog down my reading experiences. So I think I might actually reread it just so that I can highlight all of my favorite passages, because there's just so many amazing pull quotes. But anyway, emotionally, this book packs a punch as well. There is a chapter, or maybe a couple chapters specifically, that talks about her dad, that relates to letters. That's all I'm going to say. And I was sobbing, you guys. Like, I cry with books, though it has been a while, admittedly. But I'm not talking like a lone tear or two where you're just like, oh, that's so sweet. I was sobbing. Like, it's midnight and I am reading these through blurred vision because it just was so heart-wrenching. And even just thinking about it now, deep breaths. It's really good. If you enjoy women's fiction that features an emotional journey with the heroine, check this out. If you like romance that is you know, deeper than your typical tropes with sex scenes, check this out. If you just enjoy reading about people healing after, you know, going through some stuff in life, check this out. If you don't give a shit about romance or women's fiction or any of that, still check it out. This book was so good, you guys. I'm pretty sure I spent the last 5 minutes gushing about it, but really, if I had to pick from any of these books, it's this one, because it's just so good. And admittedly, it seems a bit long, but you need every single word that's in this. I'm never one to like harp about the size of a book if it's necessary or if it's well done, and this is a perfect example because it's over 300 pages, but you need all of that. There was never one moment where I thought, that scene, we don't really need it, or that chapter could have been cut out. You need it all just to get the full picture of the characters, and God, I love it so much. Okay. Putting it down. So, like I said, I may have only read 5 books this month, but it was a hell of a great reading month. Not only because I actually bought and immediately read the recently purchased books, which, first of all, never happens. If you're a bookworm, you know that as soon as the books actually come, the excitement kind of dies down and you're like, I'm just gonna put it on the shelf until I'm in the mood, and it just collects dust. That didn't happen for me. I ordered all of these books in July, read them all in July, and on top of that, the average rating was really high. I think, like I said, 8 Perfect Murders is the lowest rating. That was a 3, but even though it was a 3, it was still an enjoyable read. I was heavy on the critiques because I was expecting more, but the rest of the books, just fantastic. Beach read, fantastic. Like, if you haven't read it, please, for the love of God, order it right now and read it. And if you have read it, please let me know your thoughts below, whether you loved it like I did so we can gush together, or even if you hated it, because I'd be really interested to see your take on it, because I am just looking at it through rose-colored glasses and I can see no wrong, other than the fact that I'm already done with it. But anyway, so yeah, this is my July wrap-up. Let me know how you guys did this month, what your favorite book was, if you read any. Are you in a reading slump? You know, admittedly, guys, I didn't actually read anything in the beginning of the month. It wasn't until the last couple of weeks in July where I really got back into the groove and just kind of blew through all of these. Like the 3 thrillers, I think I finished them in a span of 4 days because they were just that good, and I was just so in the mood for thrillers. And then I switched it to beach read, and I don't know where I am now. I think I'm on a book hangover. So my next step is to figure out how to get out of that and what to read next. So anyway, I hope you guys like this video. It was rambly, I know, but I'm still suffering from beach read hangover and I just cannot articulate words very well. So if you like this video, you know, like and subscribe. I'll talk to you guys later. Happy reading. Bye.